Hello and welcome back to Services Marketing. This week we'll be dealing with Chapter 6, Understanding Costs and Developing a Pricing Strategy, which is the pricing P of the extended marketing mix. So the learning objectives for this week are first of all to describe the foundations of pricing strategy, formulate pricing objectives, formulate pricing strategies and pricing policies, define and distinguish the different types of costs, describe the significance of revenue management for service firms, and then last we'll understand how to communicate and implement service pricing strategies. So let's first of all look at the three main objectives for pricing of services. They're not really objectives, they're more groups of objectives. So the first one is revenue and profit objectives. Second one is patronage and user-related objectives, and the third group is the non-monetary pricing objectives. So let's look at revenue and profit. So sometimes the objective of the firm is just to seek and make as much profit as possible. So the organisation, like the people that run the company, the directors or the owners of the company, they want to buy nice things and they want to make lots of money, or they've got mortgages to pay, and that for whatever reason, the pricing objective is simply just to make as much money as possible. Other pricing objectives can be a little bit more detailed and more sophisticated than that. So sometimes we'll have a pricing objective to achieve a specific target level, such as 30%, but it's not to maximise profit because there might be some advantages in not capturing that profit immediately, but then later on down the track has that. I come from the construction industry, and we have this as a quite an important part of the way that we manage construction businesses. We'll know for each project that we do our cost management for, we'll have a specific target level for the percentage of that project of how much profit to make on that specific project, which grouped together will help us manage an overall pricing strategy. So there's the revenue is to achieve a specific target level. The next one is to maximize revenue from a fixed capacity. We've talked about capacity revenue management before. So think of like a hotel or something like that. You can't actually just say if you've got a hotel with 100 rooms, you can't just increase the capacity of your hotel overnight. I mean, you could build more rooms later on for sure, but that's going to take time, like a whole new different approach. So if you've got 100 rooms, that's fixed capacity. So then how are you going to maximize the revenue from your business to use those 100 rooms to the best of your ability? Another one is to cover costs. So more of a cost approach where we go, we need to cover our costs of production, including our overheads. So then you sort of work backwards and go, well, how much do things cost? And then you go, what are our overheads? And you add those two together and you work out your pricing from that perspective. The next one is cover costs of providing a specific service. So it costs this much. So it's a costing. So it costs this much to provide the service. So then we're going to base our pricing based on that cost of providing the service. Cover incremental costs of selling extra service to extra customer. Now this is of course the economic approach to it, marginal, the extra unit for extra customer, which is a lot better, but then we get into more of a dynamic pricing model where we're looking at marginal costs and marginal benefits rather than just going, well, this is how much it costs and we're going to put a margin on top of that. So already in the first revenue and profit objectives, you can see you got some simple ones and you got some more complex, more sophisticated approaches and objectives to managing pricing. Now we've got these patronage and user objectives. Now, one of those is to build demand. Now, sometimes it's not about maximising the money for each. So if you go to like a football match or something like that, it's not about making as much money as possible for each football match, because if you maximise the revenue by charging higher tickets, but you got less people in the actual game, like less spectators watching the game, that's going to impact the service product, because part of the value of going to a game, like a stadium with 40,000 people in there, is that the atmosphere of the crowd, right? So if you go, if you double the price of tickets, but you work out your price elasticity model, and you go, well, if you double the price of tickets, but we're still going to have just over half the crowd going to be there full, you go, well, that's a revenue maximisation model. You would, if it's solely on pricing, your pricing elasticity, your price elasticity would go, well, let's increase the price of our tickets. So you only got just over half a crowd, but you're making more than double the money. So, revenue maximising. But then that's going to have a significant impact on the experience that your customers, or in this case spectators, have. So then later on, further on and down the track, they'll go, oh, I don't really want to go to a football match because it's just not doesn't have the atmosphere there, right? So you've got to manage your pricing strategy then to make sure that you get enough demand coming. So in some cases, it's more important to have a full demand than it is to have a maximised revenue. Also to utilise full capacity of things, like Kontiki tours. If you've got a Kontiki tour with only 2 people on there, like it's boring as anything. So you really want to make sure some products it's critical that we have the right demand. Build a user base. So encourage trial and adoption. So sometimes when you bring out a new product, especially if you're trying to go for like an innovative product, you want to get the service innovation model. You need to get new users. So you might go, well, rather than actually charging anything at all, it's completely free. And the idea is to get people using the service, and then once they use it, then you can introduce pricing models and build market share. Sometimes market share is a really good indicator of future growth. So if you're in good cash reserves at the moment, so your balance sheet is good, you're in a strong financial position, so you don't really need to maximise revenue, but you're going to have difficult going forward. So like you might need to do a fair bit of capital expenditure, like get new assets and stuff like that. You go, well, what we're going to do now is build market share now, so that's going to sort of secure our revenue going forward into more cash difficult times. And indeed, sometimes building market share might be to squeeze out competitors as well. So if you've got a competitor that's thinking of coming to the market, you grab more market share, which makes it no longer economically viable for them to enter the market. So long term, you're better off. Strategic objectives such as position a service organisation. We've talked about this a lot. This should really come first, but pricing relates back to our positioning within the market, of course. So if your positioning doesn't reflect, if your pricing doesn't reflect your positioning, it's going to be wrong no matter what you do. So that should be an overarching thing. Reward and retain loyal customers, manage demand, and target new customers. So all of these are strategic, where you're not maximising profit in the short term, but you're thinking about long-term advantages. All right, now we've got the last one is the non-monetary objectives for pricing. Now, monetary pricing objectives are not suitable for all organisations, such as not-for-profit organisations, charities, community service, and support organisations. If you imagine a not-for-profit trying to maximise profits, it just wouldn't make sense, right? So, but yet marketing is still critically important for these people, so for these organisations. So for them, the objectives, and not just not-for-profit organisations, but for sometimes other businesses would rather make less money, but ensure that their service is fair. So some customers are more expensive to cater to service. So you go, well, let's just, as we do in marketing, we go, well, let's target the most valuable customers. Some service firms would go, yeah, all right, that's all good and well, but then we don't want to create barriers to these other less disadvantaged ones, because although the more profitable customers, because they value our business and stuff like that, the less valuable ones aren't because of the situation that they're in. They're in difficult circumstances. They're vulnerable customers, right? So it's not their choice that they're less valuable to us. It's their situation. So we're going to choose, although it's less profitable for us to service them, as part of us wanting to be, a good organisation, we're going to spend the extra, well, not spend the extra money, but we're going to prepare to lose extra revenue to make sure that our service is fair. And then express the organisational's principles as well. So, if you're an organisation that's big on sustainability, sustainability is not just about environmental sustainability, but also financial sustainability and social sustainability. So if that's your principle, sometimes you're prepared to take a loss in the financial sustainability section of things to ensure, social and environmental sustainability. All right, so now I'm going to talk to you about the role of price in marketing strategy. Now there's 3 key things here. Price has a functional and strategic role. Functional role is to generate revenue, cash flow and profit. Strategic role is much more complex. A lot of people think about pricing as the functional role for business. It's, as marketing managers, this is our job to sort of rise above that functional role of pricing and get to the long-term strategic. What sort of objectives do we want? What resources are we prepared to allocate to achieve those objectives? So there's 3 foundations to pricing strategy. We've got cost-based pricing, value-based pricing, and competition-based pricing. We'll look at those in a little bit more detail. So first of all, cost-based pricing, you're fixing the cost of providing the service, and these include fixed costs such as the rent for your building, insurance and salaries. So no matter how much you produce, these prices are going to be fixed, either monthly fixed or yearly fixed, annually fixed. So whether you're producing 1 million units or 0 units, those prices are going to be the same. We've got these semi-variable units, such as hiring casual staff. You can't really, technically you can, casual staff are only employed to the end of their shift, but there's all these, we call them semi-variable because there's costs associated with recruiting them and stuff like that as well, right? Adding a marquee for event, yes, technically it is a variable cost, but there's still some sort of fixed because you're committing to deposits and booking in advance and stuff like that. And then we've got these truly variable costs where electricity, so the more, if you've got a machine, the more work the machine does, the more electricity it consumes, so the more it costs, right? So that's a direct variable cost. The more you use it, the more you produce, the more it costs to run that machine. Food and drink, such as a restaurant, the ingredients, so the more customers you serve, the more food and drink is going to cost. And we've got activity-based pricing, which is a little bit more advanced concept, but all activities support production either directly or indirectly, so you look at the value chain analysis. Each activity in a blueprint, so we've done our service blueprinting, or we've been working on that, has costs associated with it. Costs are an integral part of creating value for customers, yields more accurate cost information for pricing decisions. So all of these things are based on what it costs to produce a service or provide a service, and then we work out our pricing based on that. Now the next one is customer value based pricing. Now marketers need to understand how customers perceive service values. This is more of an advanced way of looking at pricing. And we've got 4 broad expressions of value. And this is research published by Zemetel in this journal article here. So some customers, they see value as the value is a low price. So the cheaper it is, the better value it is. Another one is a value whatever I want in a product. So it could be cheap, but if I don't want it, it's not valuable to me because what's the point of having it, right? What's valuable to me is, if I have a car and it's got a coffee holder right there, right, that's valuable to me, right? Because it's something that I care about, something I like. Value is the quality I get for the price I pay. Cost benefit analysis. Value is what I get for what I give, which is a similar concept, right? Now the definition of value in this context that changes is the sum of all the perceived benefits minus the sum of all perceived costs of the service. This is a very economic approach to it. Benefits and cost benefit analysis, and this is a good solid definition for us to work with. However, there are other definitions of value which are a lot more subjective and based on perception, our emotional responses to market offerings. So let's look at perceived benefits then. So Smith and Colgate, it lists 4 different types of value that a customer may receive from a service. We've got functional value. We got which is basically the value, like if I buy a nail gun, the functional value for me is every time I pull that trigger, it drives a 3-inch nail or 75mm galvanized nail into this pine, right? The more reliable it is, the more it does its job. That's functional value. So that's what I buy it for. That's what it does. That's functional value. Hedonic or experimental value is the fun I get out of it. So sometimes if I buy a nail gun, like nail guns can be much fun if you've ever used one before, and it looks good and it's just enjoyable to use, right? The experience of using that nail gun is very good. And we've got symbolic or expressive value. So the brand name, not all nail gun brands are equal. So when I roll up to site with my brand new Hilti nail gun, I'm looking, it's a very expensive one and it looks good. So it's not just about how fast it can nail and how reliable it is or how easy and fun it is to do. It's also about what that status. So it shows that I'm not a handyman, I'm not, just some hack just bought a nail gun because it was cheap. No, I'm committed to my trade. I've got this nail gun and it's a symbol for me. Right, then we've got sacrificial value, which is pretty much the cost. It's like how much do you have to pay to obtain it? What do you have to sacrifice? What cost do you have to sacrifice to obtain that benefit? Read that one there, because I'm sure a lot of you are going to be using this for your assignments. Right, then we've got perceived costs. These costs include the monetary and non-monetary costs, such as financial costs, just straight out money, time and effort that costs to be able to engage with a service. Functional perform risk, we're going to look at that a little bit coming up. We've got the psychological risks, which is the risk of feeling stupid about using it. Like if you've ever been considering a new service, you think, oh, I'm not quite sure how it works, or that's a psychological risk because you could damage, you could receive damage from it. And then we've got social costs, which are, if you buy a particular product or service, and your friends are gonna go, oh, why'd you buy that for? That's gross. Then you've got social damage or social cost. All right, so here we got cost: financial, monetary, time and effort; functional, psychological, the confidence of the service provider, such as overseas medical treatment; and then we've got the social approval of friends and relatives, which is what we just sort of went through. Now, reducing costs. So working with operations experts to reduce the time to complete the service. And this is actually a pretty cool part of marketing where we do the scientific management use this approach, and we look at the efficiency of each part of the production process to trim out the inefficiencies in there and then maximize efficiency and then reduce costs, right? So it's quite a functional perspective, and I think it's good. You should be doing this sort of anyway. You can go overboard on that, to the point where it costs more to reduce the costs than the costs themselves. It's still something that, as marketing people, more the operations people will be into that, like the engineers and the stuff like that. But as marketing people, it's still part of our realm. So minimising unwanted psychological costs of the service, eliminating or minimising unwanted physical effort, notably during search and delivery. Some services are just physically difficult, just awkward to deal with. Decreasing unpleasant sensory cost of the service. For some people, this is a very big issue, sensory costs. Like, you just don't want to go to a store that's too loud, or you don't want to go to some people are allergic to perfumes, so that's a sensory thing, like smells. So you go in there and you smell it and it's like, oh, they just can't deal with that. It might not be for us, the marketing manager running that business, or yet we need to be aware that for our customers might be a big issue. Suggesting ways to reduce associated monetary costs such as discounts and stuff. All right, then we look at competition-based pricing. So competitors are the third determinant of service pricing. Firms with relatively undifferentiated services need to monitor what competitors are charging and should try to price accordingly, which makes sense, right? So if you've got what you think is a really good service and you're charging $100 per unit for your service, and you think that's great, but your competitors are only charging $80, well, there's a big market difference there, so that's going to have a big impact on your business, right? So you need to analyse, well, how are they able to deliver a similar service to us, a competitive service to us, yet so much cheaper? It could just be that your pricing strategies are so out and you haven't updated them. Price competition intensifies with the increased number of competitors, which makes sense. Increased substitute offers, which are not direct one. These are, we've talked about this in the workshops before. Think about food. You could be buying substituting offers is like the state of felt deprivation that you're satisfying is convenience and hunger. So whether you're going to Hungry Jack's, McDonald's, or you could just be going to Coles and grabbing a Cook Chook on the way home as well. So that's substituting offers. Wider distribution of competitor and substitution offers, and then increased surplus capacity in the industry. All right. The following circumstances reduce price competition. Non-price related costs of using competing alternatives are perceived to be higher. So whether it is or not, it's actually not really important. It's whether customers perceive it to be higher. Personal relationships matter. So, I'm prepared to pay more for my coffee if I'm getting it from a barista that I actually like, or I've got a relationship with, or the barber that I go to, or the hairdresser that I go to. So for some people, and banks, like I've had this with my own bank. They're like, another bank, like, we can give you a cheaper rate on your home loan. And I'm just thinking, you know what? Like, I've got a good relationship with my bank at the moment. I don't really care. A little bit wrong because it's not a personal relationship, but that's an organisational relationship, and personal relationships are even more important. Switching costs are higher, so sticking with the bank thing. For me to change my mortgage from one bank to another bank, I just don't want to think about having to go through and signing all the mortgage documents again. It's just more admin work in my life that I do not want to deal with right now. So the switching costs are high. Time and location specifically reduce the choice, obviously. Makes sense. So that ends section 1 or part 1. We're going to focus on part 2 where we look at revenue management for service organisations.